I'm here with Steve Moore today. Steve, this is going to be fun because what you do is essentially right up the alley of what I explained to you, why I started this, and my ultimate goal with it as a former athlete and helping former athletes transition to what's next in life. So I'm excited to talk to you, and thanks for the time.
No problem at all. I'm always keen to engage in discussion with anyone who's interested in my line of work, and particularly athletes who've gone through transition from professional or high performance sport into a new career, and how they've navigated that. And for me, it's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So yeah, so I had explained to you on a previous call that I was a college athlete, so not a professional athlete like yourself. Would love to just hear about your rugby career a little bit and kind of the origins of how you got started playing rugby and to the point where you did it playing as a professional.
Yeah, well, I kind of fell into professional sport, if I'm really honest, and I know I don't look it, but I'm in my early 50s now, and it's a long time ago that I was a very young teenager playing lots of different sports. I was always a very keen sportsman. The family are very sporty. My dad played semi-professional soccer in the UK. My mum was a keen hockey and netball player, and sport was something that we were really brought up with, and was a central part of our life. We're Evertonians, Everton fans, who, for those who follow the Premiership, hasn't been a great couple of years for us. But hopefully, with some American owners now coming into Everton, we should see some success going forward. But we were season ticket holders back in the 80s and went to see them regularly. And sport was played a big part in our lives. And I got injured playing soccer when I was 15, nearly 16 years old. And I lived in a town that was a soccer town, Wrexham, which is a well-known town now with some American owners at Wrexham Football Club, and really trying to do some great things there with Ryan and the guys there who've done an awful lot to not just to bring football to the fore in the town, but it's a city now, Wrexham, but really to help the community and bring that community together. So they've done an amazing job. But living in Wrexham as a soccer town, and we had a rugby club, but I steered very, very well clear of it because I'd gone down as a very young 9 or 10 year old to do some junior rugby stuff, and I hated it. I didn't want to get battered up. I really enjoyed playing soccer, and I felt that if I was playing rugby, I was going to be injuring myself all the time and not be able to do the sport that I really loved. However, I got injured playing soccer, injured my ankle quite badly, and my dad's best friend was the chairman of the local rugby club. He'd been continually trying to encourage myself and Andy, my brother, to go down and play because we were tall, big lads for our age. I think probably in my mid-teens, I was around about 6'3", 6'4" already. So, and Andy's similar height as well. And he saw his opportunity, and he encouraged my dad to take me to the rugby club to get physiotherapy and to see what was one of the best trainers in the town at the time, to get myself physically fit again to go back and play soccer. And I did a pre-season with the rugby club. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the social side of it as well, and rugby's a very social sport. And by the end of the pre-season, there was a couple of games coming up before the season started, and I was not bullied, but I was encouraged to play in those games. And initially, I was like, "No, I'm just going to go back to playing soccer." And by the end of that pre-season, I'd agreed to go and play one game. I said, "I'll have one game. If I like it, maybe I'll stick around. If I hate it, I'm done." And I scored 4 tries in that game. I kicked a load of conversions and goals because I could kick a football. And I fell in love with the sport immediately, and almost straight away said, like, I'm done with soccer. I put my soccer boots in the bin, and I turned and pivoted towards rugby, and I haven't looked back ever since. I became the youngest player to play senior rugby at Wrexham Rugby Club at 17 years old. And then I kind of went on a little bit of a journey with the junior national team. I got spotted, which is quite a difficult thing in rugby if you're a North Walian, which is where I was. I was in North Wales. South Wales is the epicenter of rugby. And it's a really difficult journey to get recognised from North Wales. And I managed to do that as an 18, 19-year-old, got picked for Wales under 19s. And then I got spotted by Swansea Rugby Club, a guy called Mike Ruddock, who I've got an awful lot to thank for. He spotted me and encouraged me to go down and play what was the elite game at the time down in South Wales for Swansea Rugby Club. And rugby at that time was an amateur sport, so it hadn't turned professional. We weren't getting paid to play at the highest level. We either had to have a job or you were a student and you trained twice a week and you played on a Saturday. But I managed to play for Swansea, which was one of the highest teams that I could play for. We played in Europe and we're very, very successful. We had Welsh internationals, British Lion internationals in the team. And from that point on, I went on a journey of high performance sport. Rugby turned professional in the mid 90s. I'd become a police officer at the time. So that was my day job. And then when rugby turned fully professionally, I gave that up and became a full-time professional rugby player. And I stayed with the sport then for another, nearly 10 years as a professional. Played over 300 high-performance games, high-level games. Played internationally for Wales, played for the Barbarians, and travelled the world chasing this oval-shaped ball with my friends. And I was very talented and was talented enough to get paid for the privilege of doing that. And I look back on that period of my life with a great deal of satisfaction and pride now, 20 odd years later. And I realized that it really gave me the foundations for everything that I've done since I came out of high performance sport, and has really sort of given me the springboard to be able to go on and do what I've done since then.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for the background on that. And as an American, admittedly not knowing a ton about rugby, what is a rugby season like? Is it, because I think about American football, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
starts typically in September, ends
Mm-hmm.
in January, February.
Yeah.
Is that similar to rugby, or what are the seasons like?
No, it starts at the same time. So you'd have a pre-season in the June, July time when the weather's reasonably good, and then you get into and you play your top level rugby when the weather's terrible. So through the winter in the UK, so we go through September to May. So it's a reasonably long season. You're talking 9 months, and you don't. Back in the day, you used to play twice a week, so there'd be 2 games a week. But then we weren't fully professional, and we weren't training every day. So I think the guys now who are playing, they have 1 game a week, and they have European competition. So you're probably looking at playing maybe in today's rugby, you're looking at maybe 20 to 30 games a season, and maybe a few more if you're a full international. You're in the international scene, so you may be putting on maybe another 5 to 10 games on that as well. So it's quite rigorous, and it's a really physically demanding sport, mentally demanding as well, because there's a lot of pain you've got to go through to actually get on the field to play on a Saturday. Hats off to the guys now who are full time professionals, because it's a different sport than the one I came out of 20 odd years ago. The guys are so much more fitter, they're stronger, they're bigger, they're faster, and the collisions are even bigger than they were back in my day. And they really bash their bodies about, and I'm feeling it now in my early 50s, so I'm sure they will when they come through to that kind of age as well.
I was going to ask you, how's your body holding up? Yeah, because I'm in Philadelphia, and I'm a big Philadelphia Eagles fan. They have a big
Yeah, they
game.
just won at the weekend, didn't they?
They just won, and they have a big game coming up, the NFC Championship, this upcoming weekend. But I believe Jordan Mailata, their big tackle, he was a rugby player at one point, and he
Yeah,
transitioned over to American football. But it's, oh my goodness, you guys aren't wearing pads. It's a physically demanding sport.
we wear a gum shield and that's it, to protect our teeth. And there are similarities with NFL and rugby, definitely, in terms of the collisions and the intensity of the sport. Obviously, rugby doesn't have the stoppages that the NFL game has. We're pretty consistent in terms of for 80 minutes we're on the go and we're hitting each other consistently over that period. But there's a lot of crossovers, and I think there's a number of guys. Obviously, there's a guy called Lewis Rees-Zammit who has been with the Jags this year on their second team, their practice team. He's a Welsh international from just from around the corner from where I live, actually. So he's converted. There's a couple of guys at the Giants. I think their kicker was an Irish rugby player. So there's a lot of similarities and crossover. But there are some very stark differences. The padding and the protection that you guys get over there is phenomenal and completely different to what we experience. So yeah, and I think that we've learned a lot. I think going forward from some of the challenges that the NFL guys have had around concussion and head injury, and we're learning now about that in our sport, and there's because rugby went professional probably 25, 30 years ago, we're now starting to see athletes who are struggling with those mental health challenges because of the contact challenges that we have in sport at this level, and the NFL's gone through that massively as well, hasn't it?
Oh, the NFL's going through it, yeah, in a big way. Yeah, you've seen that probably the past decade is when
Yeah,
some of those players, coming out like
yeah,
Junior Seau, and just it's a car accident, like they say,
yeah,
every single play. But
yeah.
that's awesome, Steve. That's a great way to just lay some of the background. So I'd love to ask you just about the career winding down and how you were approaching, or maybe where your mindset was at that time, thinking about a career after your playing days.
Yeah. Well, you asked about my body. Well, I battered my body, to be honest. I was in one of the positions on the field that was really at the forefront of contact constantly, not just in games but in training as well. And I look back on that, and I wouldn't change a thing. I loved every minute of it, and there's no way I'd complain about playing my sport. I wish I could go back and play it now, 20 odd years later, because I miss it terribly, particularly that Saturday sort of environment, and the excitement of getting ready to go out on the field and preparing yourself properly for that battle and that engagement. So I miss all of that, definitely. But as I was coming towards the back end of my career, I was certainly feeling it physically. I think in the last 18 months, I had 4 operations on different parts of my body. I had a shoulder, a double hernia. I had a knees wipeout, and I had a back injury, which completely ended my career. I had surgery on my back. And I think in total now I've had 17 surgeries on different parts of my body to keep me stood up straight. And during that period, I was, there was a lot of soul searching going on. And I'd always said that if I got to the period of my career where I couldn't actually train in the week, and they were trying to roll me out on the Saturday and just, patch me up and, bandage me up to get me out there, then that would be the time that I needed to sort of consider what I was doing next. And I always thought that I'd make that decision myself, but I kept going and kept going. And, I was quite resilient in terms of my mental strength around my health and my physicality. And I was always ready to try and prove people wrong. So when a surgeon said, no, you shouldn't go back and play, I was like, well, sod you, I'm going to go and show you that I can go back and play. So I was kind of in denial for quite a while. And the injury that finished my career, I didn't retire fully until, that was in September. And I didn't retire fully until probably the March time of the following year, because I was trying to rehab and get back and prove that I was able to actually be effective for the team again. And I wasn't ready to give it up. And underlying all of that was that I hadn't done any preparation for retirement. I hadn't thought about it fully. It was always there as a nagging thing in the back of my mind. Have I done anything? Am I going to do anything? Have I prepared properly? And the answer was no. And I hid from it. And I really tried to elongate my career to mask the fact that I'd done nothing about what was going to happen next. And I think I've told you this already in some of our previous conversations, Joe, that the last day as a professional sportsman, I'd made the decision to retire. I lived about 35, 40 minutes away from the club. Drove there in the sponsored car that I had, which was a nice BMW, to sign a release form to say that I wouldn't play anymore and I'd finished my career. And turned up the club, signed the documents, and I said, yeah, I've got this sponsored car. I'll go and get it valeted and bring it back in a really good state so you can hand it on to another player. And they said, no, that's not going to happen. We want the keys right now. So I had to take the car key off my fob and hand the keys straight to them. I said, well, how am I going to go home? And they said, well, there's a phone there. You can ring a taxi and you can get a taxi home. And that was a long half an hour journey back home, to be honest. That was a realization of the end of my career. and I was a bit like, right, okay, what's next? What am I going to do? And it was quite sobering. But I started then to try and reflect on a lot of the things that I'd learned um, in my high performance career and some of the stuff that I'd done in my career previous to being a professional sportsman. Um, it took me a long time to unpack all of that. It took me a good 6 to 7 months to really unpack all of that. To be honest, the initial feelings were relief because my body was so knackered that I was just like, okay, that's a relief. I don't have to go training now. I don't have to flog myself to death just to earn a couple of quid at the end of the month. And I had the opportunity. I had young children at the time. I had the opportunity to take them to school and to spend a bit of time with the family. Um, and I also took a bit of time then to reflect on some of the stuff that had gone on over the past 10, 12, 13 years. And I was really struggling to come to terms with it a little bit. And I looked out for some sort of signposts, some guidance from organisations that I thought could potentially help me. My own union, the Welsh Rugby Union, the Rugby Players Association, and there was very little help or guidance. Will help you put a CV together or a resume together. We'll help you talk to a few people to see if there are any connections we can make for you. And that was really about it. There was nothing tangible that was out there to really support my transition, my retirement, to help me come to terms with that, but also to give me a little bit of a pathway towards the future. And I was very lucky. Initially I tried to apply for a number of different jobs, and I probably put about 30 job applications out into the world, and I didn't get one reply. And I was totally crestfallen. I was like, I'm super employable. What the hell's the matter? I've done this, I've done that. I've won championships, I've won cups, I've won medals. Why the hell doesn't anyone even want to reply to me, let alone interview me and take me on? So that was a real sort of a stark realization that that it wasn't going to be as easy as I thought it was going to be to find a job and to find a new career pathway. And I was very lucky. A friend of my father's, he had invested in a small business locally to me, a web development business, and he said, "Listen, why don't you go and have a chat to the guy who owns the business and see if there's any synergies? I know he plays rugby, and you'll have a good chat with him at least, but see if there's something we can do." And I went along, and he interviewed me. We got on famously, and he gave me a sales job, a cold call sales job, selling websites. And he wanted to get into the sports arena and do websites for sports organizations, and thought that I could support and help with that. Little did he know how poor my cold call sales skills were, and how much I really detested sitting in an office, not being out on a rugby field at that particular time in my life. And after a couple of weeks, he came to me and he said, "Listen, Steve, I'm watching you do this job, and you hate it, I can tell, and you're not very good at it. So let's stop there. Let's not go any further forward with this." He said, "But I can see something in you. I can see how you interact with everyone in the office. You've got great personal skills. There's a little spark there of something. So why don't you just shadow me, spend a bit of time with me, and I'll mentor you a little bit and show you how I set my business up, and see if there's something that happens through that." And I shadowed him for about 6 or 7 months. I didn't earn a penny for him, and he kept paying me, and it wasn't a huge wage, but it was some money coming through the door. And that's one of the things that people don't realize when you retire from sport. As soon as your contract is ended, or you don't get another contract, your money finishes. And if you haven't looked after your money, or if you haven't earned a huge amount of money, because not all sportsmen and women earn lots of money, then you've got to go and find a job. You've got to have money coming in to pay the bills, keep the roof over your head, and to look after your family. So I was grateful that he did that, and I had an amazing journey with him as a mentor, just showing me how he'd set his business up, and he really inspired me to become an entrepreneur and to look at how I could create my own business. And after nearly a year of being with him, I then set up my own business, and it was an e-commerce. It was a e-retail shop that I set up, and I went on an entrepreneurial journey from that point.
So that's so interesting, because he witnessed. Like, I'm curious what would have happened. Do you think he would have stayed in that job had he not approached you and said, "Steve, this just isn't really working out.
I
What
would
were you?
probably have lasted another 2 weeks at the
uh,
most
All right.
before I walked out. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
So
I was beside myself. I hated it. I couldn't
right.
stand it. No.
Right. So then you go on this entrepreneurial journey. Um, did you get that same feeling of that you got during your playing days while you were going on that journey a little bit, starting up your own businesses early on? What?
Um, yeah, look, I was all this. I think when you've when you performed at the highest level in something, whether that's sport, whether it's theatre, whether it's in business, um, there's something special that goes along with that. And I think when you finish, you're always trying to recreate that kind of feeling. And I always wanted to have that same purpose again that I had when I was playing rugby. Um, and certainly in the early days of setting up my own business, it's exciting and it's challenging. Definitely, you're learning new things, you're learning new skills, you're finding out about some of your limitations, where you need to upskill, and what you've got to do to get on. You're learning about some of the skills that you'd developed that you weren't aware of as well, and so that was really interesting. But all along that sort of entrepreneurial startup phase of stuff, I was enjoying myself, and I started to earn some money, and I did reasonably well out of it. Um, I still didn't find I had that really kind of that feeling in my stomach of excitement every day, and I couldn't wait to get into work. When I was playing rugby, I couldn't wait to get into training. I had a great team that I was around. I loved what I was doing, and there was a true purpose behind every training session that we put in. There were goals that we'd set, and we were really looking at how we could be as successful as possible. And yes, I was doing that in my entrepreneurial journey, but I was one of one. I was on my own. So there was no one else with me. So even the small wins that I had at the time, I'd sit and have a glass of wine on my own and celebrate it on my own. But it felt a little bit like a bit of a damp squib, and um, so I was always kind of still searching for that purpose and that probably led me from the initial business that I set up when I left my first job to do that. I moved on to another business that I set up, and probably two or three other businesses that I created before settling on what I'm doing now.
Sure. So it was you didn't get the same feeling because you were missing the team aspect, and I'm sure that's what you find. And yeah, not to jump too far ahead, but I'm sure that's what you find with a lot of athletes that are retiring is that they get into a career. And sure, you're surrounded by a team in a corporate environment, but it's it's not the same. I mean, it's a little bit different.
It is absolutely, yeah. I think when you retire, particularly from team sport, and I include um, lots of individual athletes in that, because they have a team around them that's helping them to be the very best they can be. So just because you've got 15 other people with you on the field doesn't mean that you should exclude guys who are an individual sportsman or woman. And so when you work with a team, it's a really exciting environment. It's vibrant, it's energetic, and as I said, there's purpose behind everything that you're doing. Not that there wasn't purpose behind the things I was doing when I retired, but there's a collective effort towards a goal, and I really enjoyed those moments where we either achieved or didn't achieve. Because if you didn't achieve, you go back to the drawing board and right, okay, where how do we fix this? Where do we go from here? And that taught me a lot in terms of how I motivated myself going forward in my business life. Um, but you certainly feel very lonely when you retire. As you say, whether you go to a corporate environment. I went to initial job where there were another 10 people in the office, so I wasn't on my own. But if I felt very lonely because I felt no one was experiencing the things that I was experiencing, the loss of my identity as a professional sportsman, all of the things that had gone with that, the loss of the financial loss that I was experiencing. I was nowhere near what I was earning as a sportsman. So there are lots of different dynamics that are in play that really make you feel as though you're the only one going through it. And subsequently, what I know now and the experiences that I've had with what I do currently and have been for the last 15 years is that there are many athletes who are going through a very similar experience, and they really do feed off each other when you bring them into an environment where athletes can learn from each other, share experiences, and have peer-to-peer learning. It's a really special thing to see and to be part of. So yeah, you feel very lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a perfect segue really into what you're what you folks are doing now and have been doing for the last decade plus, if I'm not mistaken, with Athlete Career Transition Act.
Yeah,
Um, so what led you to, because I found, and me personally too, just speaking with a lot of folks, they experience exactly what you just explained, but maybe they go out and search for whether it's a networking group or a faith group or anything like that. But
yeah.
you took action and started something yourself. So would you mind just explaining that process and getting it started?
Sure. It was, well, I was no stranger to setting up a business. I'd done it probably 4 or 5 times by the time this idea came to fruition. And um, it was really off the back of a number of conversations that I was having with my brother. And my brother, Andy, had um, a similar experience in terms of professional sport. He's slightly younger than me, so he came from being a student into professional sport, and then played internationally, captained Wales, our country, as well, and had a very similar high performance journey to myself. So we'd gone through all that at a very similar time. We retired at a very similar time as well. I was 31, he was 30, and we're only 18 months apart. Um, so our journeys were pretty similar to that point. And then when we retired, we were living in different parts of the UK. We had both had young families, and we kind of went on separate business journeys. I did what I did, what I've just explained to you in terms of finding that job, and then going on an entrepreneurial journey. Andy went into property, and then he went into the City of London into finance, and so we had very different journeys from in terms of work and career pathway. And we were at a family function, just chatting a little bit about business and what was going on, and then for some reason, we started talking about our own transition from sport to real life. And this is 6 years afterwards, mine 6, 7 years afterwards. We hadn't approached it. We'd seen each other, but we were big tough guys, and we weren't going to go around talking about the emotional side of leaving sport at that point. And mental health was not a huge a topic of discussion at that point either. And we left it alone, and it was nice to actually sit down and talk about some of the challenges we'd both faced, because we hadn't really addressed that with each other. And there's no secret, we were having a few beers and talking about it. And he'd just come back from a trip to Africa. He'd climbed Kilimanjaro with 15 former Welsh international rugby captains, raising money for a charity that we're both close to. And he was started to talk about the trip that he'd been on, and it was like, yeah, it was an amazing trip, and seeing the sunrise over the Serengeti was awesome. And he said, but there was a few things that happened that I want to discuss with you. I was like, right, okay. And I initially thought, well, what's he going to talk about? He's going to, he's found God on the top of the mountain and all of this. So I was ready to really get stuck into him and take the mickey out of him a little bit. But he started talking about something that really resonated with me. And he said, look, all of the guys that we were on the trip with were captains of our country, all did really, really well in sport. Some of them well outside of sport, but every single guy around the campfire, once we got rid of the great stories, the victories and the tours and all that sort of stuff, started talking about some more serious challenges and issues that they'd had, and particularly around the transition period and how difficult it had been, and varying degrees of challenges, from simple things like identity crisis and trying to work out what skill sets they developed and that they could take forward, all the way through to some more serious challenges around addiction and relationship challenges, financial issues, all that sort of stuff. And he was like, it really hit home to him on that trip that if these guys could really suffer and be challenged with it, guys who are leaders and captains of our country, then surely every other athlete who's going through that transition must be feeling the same, if not worse, about how they view their life going forward. And by the end of that night and the discussions that we had and 5 or 6 beers, we decided that we were going to do something about it, and we created Athlete Career Transition. And it was a time where there was no one doing anything like that, certainly in the UK. No one was addressing those challenges or issues, certainly not any organisations that potentially should have been looking at it. So we were kind of mavericks in that space, and we were forging a road for ourselves, not really knowing where we were going or what we were going to do, but we knew we needed to do something about it. And that was 15 years ago. And we've had a reasonably successful journey from then.
Yeah. It's amazing what 5 or 6 beers can do
It's generally not great ideas come out of that, but this one was a good one.
not always, but this one ended up working out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So then where did you start? Because did you have connections with corporations at that time, or were you seeking? I guess what was the business plan? I mean, you guys had the idea, but how did you plan
um,
on actually
the,
going
the
forward?
initial business plan was almost written on the back of a cigarette packet in the pub. But all seriousness, I was at a bit of a crossroads of what I was doing, and I had a bit of flexibility in what I could do. And I decided, right, okay, I'd set up a number of different businesses. I said it wasn't my first rodeo on that one. So I created the business in terms of the legalities of it and incorporation, all that sort of stuff. And then between the two of us, over the course of about a year, we just did a load of market research, and we spent time talking to athletes that we knew, getting introduced to other athletes, talking to the business connections that we had, and really trying to join the dots and see where the biggest challenges were, what the roadblocks were, if there were any, what the opportunities looked like, and where we could push on open doors. And it was really clear at the time that business really valued athletes, particularly the profile of an athlete. And athletes were being utilized in an ambassadorial way, or to come in to do an inspirational speech, or to talk to clients, or to try and open some doors, whatever it might be. And athletes were really curious, and were definitely wanting to understand more about the business world and how they could get involved in it, not just from an ambassadorial perspective, but from an actual job perspective. And no one was joining all the dots between all of that, and connecting everything fully. And what we did at the time is, right, okay, we understand that athletes want this and need it. We understand that businesses really value athletes but don't know how to interact with them or bring them through. And we created our own pathway to connect the two together to start with. And it was very simple, that we would talk to businesses and say, what kind of individual do you need? We went and spoke to athletes that we knew and said, this is the kind of thing that they're looking for. Would you be interested? And it was as simple as just connecting them together to begin with. Now, over the course of time, what we've done is we've created a really robust procedure to bring athletes through to us to start with, so that we can really understand them in the very best way possible. We spend a lot of time with each individual. We talk to them. We profile them in detail. They go through a number of different assessments with us. They'll go through a video interview with us as well. And once we understand what athlete we've got in front of us, and importantly, what they stand for, what they really want to do going forward, and how we feel we can support them in the best way, we'll then create a presentation opportunity with a partner of ours. And we work with lots of different partners in different industries. Importantly, businesses that have great culture and values. They want to support employees' career pathways. They have great onboarding processes. They value what sportsmen and women bring to the table. And they're prepared to look at talent from a very different lens and a different perspective, and are prepared to utilize our experience and knowledge in the marketplace to bring amazing talent to their door. And the thing that really helps us to stand out from any other business that's in this arena is that we're not just invested in getting athletes to the door and finding a great opportunity for them, but we're really invested in the future of them once they go through the door. So we put a whole package around each athlete in terms of support and guidance, depending on where they're at in their own journey and their own experiences, and what support they actually need. So they have access to business mentoring. They have access to high performance transition psychologists. And we work very closely with our business partners to ensure that anything that they're experiencing or going to experience in the business setting that may be unsettling or maybe a real challenge for them, or they don't have the requisite skill sets at that time for, we will support that journey and support the business as well. So yeah, it's been a journey over the last 15 years coming up. We're very happy with where we're at, but there's a lot to come. We're evolving as a business, and the future is really exciting for us at the moment.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So, and that's what I was going to say, because on the website there's ACT learning. So basically, what you were just describing, and would you describe it as a community almost, where do other athletes connect with others as well, or is it more so? Well, actually, yeah. Instead of asking you an or question, explain that.
Yeah, well, what we've looked at, particularly over the last 2 years, is really how we can affect more athletes' lives positively. And the ambition when we first set out on the journey that we're on was really to get to as many athletes as we could do, to give them the very best transition support possible, and to give them a clear pathway to success in the future. And the way that we're able to do that currently is utilizing our relationships with our partners, creating programs and opportunities with them, and really pipelining talent for our partners to bring into those businesses. Now that's great, and we've done reasonably well out of that, and we're really happy with the success we've had, and we've got some amazing case stories over particularly the last 10 years. The first 5 years was quite tough because no one would open the door to us to start with, to be honest, because they didn't know what we were doing. They'd never seen it before, and it's really tough getting a new business and creating your own industry, basically. It's really tough trying to get that off the ground. But particularly in the last 10 years, we've seen huge success, and we've got lots of amazing stories from athletes, and we've got great case studies from business partners who have had really good long-term journeys with us. And for us, it's about long-term relationships and creating something that's meaningful going forward. We're not into one-hit wonders and trying to shoehorn athletes into as many places as we can do. For us, it's about narrowing down those partnerships and making sure that they're really meaningful and have longevity, so that we can support their journey around talent and look at the strategies that they're building and how we can support their strategies with our talent. And making sure that the talent that they bring in actually sticks. And for us, it's very clear what we do for athletes and how we support athletes in the very best way possible. But for our business partners, it's really important that they get a return on investment in terms of the relationship that we have, and ensuring that athletes stick and that they are retained in the business, particularly at a time when there's a lot of churn within businesses, and there's talent departments in a lot of corporates are really struggling to keep talent. For us, it's important that we stick with the talent that we place to make sure that they get everything they need to be seeing themselves on a career pathway with that business. And we've got I think the latest stats, the retention rate we have of athletes that we place with a partner still being there at least 2 years after being hired is 94%. And a lot of that's down to the work that we do up front in terms of finding the right talent, connecting them correctly. But a lot of it's also down to the amazing work that our transition team do and making sure that athletes land safely, they have great support. And that's been great. But we're not getting to enough athletes. We're not creating enough career pathways with partners, and we want to scale the business so that we can do that. And over the last 18 months, 2 years, we've been looking at how we can do that effectively. And obviously, technology is moving at such a pace now. The ambitions that we had 15 years ago, we can start to realize utilizing technology. And we've gone through a bit of a digital transformation. And we want to create an ecosystem, a community of athletes that can be self-serving, that can support each other, that we can support in a better way than we currently do, because we have them in one community rather than it being disparate. We want to give them opportunities to interact with our partners in a more seamless way, in a cooler fashion, creating workshops, conferences, fireside chats, careers fairs. We want to engage with brand partners so that we can offer athletes opportunities with brands that might make sense for them as an individual and make sense for our brand partners as well. And to do that within the community, there's a number of elements that we wanted to put together that would be attractive for athletes, but would also be able to support their journeys going forward. So you mentioned learning. Yes, learning is a really key aspect for athletes going forward. And until probably 18 months, 2 years ago, our partners were really happy to bring talent from the sports world and teach it in-house what it could do, because they came with all the requisite kind of characteristics and traits that everyone knows that athletes come with. And they were very happy to fill in the gaps, basically. That's changing. And what we're finding now is some of our partners are saying, are there courses that athletes could do that could bring them to us in a more accelerated state so that they can hit the ground running a bit quicker when they're with us? Are there things that we can do in-house that will support that? Athletes have been asking us how they can be better prepared for going into a career opportunity. So we thought, what we'll do is we'll create our own learning zone where athletes can have remote transition support. They can have opportunities to learn core business skills. They can look at more specific business skills. We can create courses with our partners that can sit in the learning zone where our partners can showcase their business as well as teach athletes what they need to know going into a particular role. We can be very specific in that. So that's a really exciting development for us. And we've created a brand new platform for our community. So it's called Act Community. And every athlete who comes into the community will have access to learning. They'll have access to the community itself. It's almost going to be a LinkedIn for athletes, so to speak. There'll be opportunities to connect with other athletes from different sports, connect from athletes from your own sport. We're going to be targeting national governing bodies as well and talking to national governing bodies about how we can encourage their athletes whilst they're still competing to be part of our community and to experience all of the things that athletes need to know about before they retire and have that network in place ready to go once they are at that point in their careers. We're going to be looking at entrepreneurial athletes who have a great business idea but have no way of getting it off the ground, and it'll be some practical stuff we can help them with. There'll be some funding and some investment opportunities potentially going forward. So there's a whole host of stuff that we're putting together on the new platform that we're going to be launching probably back end of March that will allow us to really bring more athletes into the transition world and create a space that's not scary, that is positive, and that is going to help athletes really traject themselves into the next phase of their life. And in all honesty, it's the biggest phase of your life going forward once you retire from sport, unless you're a golfer or a sport like that where you can go on forever.
Yeah.
So we've got an ambitious, but we feel attainable target of working with over 1 million athletes by the next Olympics in LA 2028. So there's a lot of work to do between now and then.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there's so much that goes into it, and it sounds like it has evolved in a big way just from 15 years ago. I mean, just from what you're saying, employers themselves are looking to have athletes more trained up, and that's when you were saying that it reminds me of what I think I mentioned to you in our previous call of J.R. Butler, who I had on here with the Shift Group. It's like I'm pretty sure his value proposition is training up or athletes, training them in sales, and then connecting them with employers. So it sounds like that's because an employer doesn't just, they're like, all right, here's here's an athlete, but now we have to put them through 2 years of training until they get to the point where we need them to perform. So it's just a very intricate discussion and in depth, I guess. So then where do you see the future of work going then?
The future of work, that's a broad question.
It's extremely broad, but just in terms of the digital transformation and what people want out of work, maybe like you've said.
Well, I think there's been lots of talk in the last 5 years or so around mental health to start with, and I'm really pleased that that's the case, because I think the more open we can be around challenges that we face mentally. And it doesn't always have to be negative. There are lots of positives that can come out of discussing and talking about mental health and how you can improve it and how it can benefit you. So I'm pleased that that's the case now that it's a bit more open. And there's a work-life balance that needs to go with that, and that's something that we talk to our athletes about a lot, because when you're an athlete, you throw literally everything into your sport. You spend every waking minute thinking about it, preparing for it, training mentally, training physically. It takes over your life. And athletes have the propensity to do exactly the same when they come out of sport into whatever role they take up in their new career going forward. They throw it literally everything at it, and they don't look after other areas of their lives, and they don't really value spending time on themselves. So one of the big things for us is making sure that athletes have a balance in their life. Yes, they've got to be dedicated and committed to a new role and new opportunity, but they've also got to be dedicated and committed to themselves, because there's a lot going on behind the scenes once you retire from high level, high performance sport that you need to address so that you can move forward in the right way. And if you don't do that, it'll pop up at some point in the next 5 to 10 years and surprise you. And if you're not prepared or ready for it, then it can be debilitating. So we work a lot on that. I think in terms of what I see going forward around the workplace, AI is obviously a huge element of that going forward. There's so much going on in terms of the evolution of AI from the chat GPT 18 months ago to where we're at now. It's just light years ahead of what it was when it first started. And that's something that we're going to be incorporating into our business, into our community, and creating AI coaches for us, for our athletes, AI career coaches, enabling athletes to work within the community on a pathway that makes sense for them, that we can really help curate with them. So AI, I think, is going to be something that lots of people need to embrace, and not be frightened or scared of. And I was a naysayer to start with, because I'm a traditionalist. I write everything down. I'm a book reader rather than a book listener. I have to print stuff off and write notes on it, all that sort of stuff. And I felt rather that if I wasn't producing the work myself, then it wasn't my work. And I know now, having delved into and really dived into properly into the world of AI, that it can be there to support what you're doing and to accelerate what you're doing, and to create better procedures for yourself, better policies for your business going forward. And it can just make your life a lot easier. It streamlines lots of different things. And if it's embraced and utilized really well, then I think it's a force for good rather than a force for evil, which is what a lot of people see it as. So yeah, I think AI is going to play a big part in the future, and just getting that work balance thing right, for particularly for athletes going forward, is key.
I love it. Yeah, that's it. AI can be intimidating, but I think the more we embrace it, the better off we'll be. So, all right, Steve. Well, this is great, because, like I told you, this is exactly up the alley of where I want to take this podcast, being about 60 in. I wanted to ask you, so just in terms of advice, so you went through this yourself. You built an entire company over the last 15 years around this, but advice for an athlete that's going through that right now, and just maybe before they get to you, or once they get to you, what kind of advice would you give them to successfully go from that athletic career to finding a successful career?
Yeah. There's a number of things that can be done, and it depends on the individual. The first thing, in my experience, was I didn't prepare, and all athletes know that you've got to prepare properly for what's coming. You know, if you're looking at a championship, if you're looking at a whole season, if you're looking at an Olympic cycle for 4 years, you know, you're preparing properly for those events. And I failed to prepare properly for my retirement. So I think the first thing, and this is something that we're really keen on doing within the new community that we're building, and the platform that we're producing, is we want to engage with athletes pre-retirement. We want to make sure that they're looking and thinking about retirement in a positive way, not a scary way. We want to make sure that they're preparing properly and informing themselves as to what the opportunities are once you retire, rather than, you know, what are the really big downfalls of retirement. So preparation is key, definitely. So and something I didn't do, and I do regret not doing that fully. Reaching out to people, don't be afraid to talk to people, because you're not on your own. There are people out there like ACT who will be there to support and guide and help. We're not the only ones, but we'd like the athletes to come to us, obviously. But reach out to someone, because you're not on your own, and you'll find solace, and you'll find that you are able to manage things a little bit easier once you know someone else is on your side or going through a similar experience to you. And the other thing that I think is really important is for athletes, once they've retired, to look back on their careers positively. And I did this for a long time. When I first retired, I looked back on my career, wishing I was still there, wishing I could still compete, wishing I could still get on the rugby field and do the things that I used to do. And it was frustrating and upsetting that I couldn't do that. And it wasn't until I actually started looking back on my career positively and really being grateful and thankful for all of the things that I achieved, but also really delving into how I'd achieved those things and what I'd learned to be able to be the athlete that I was, that I started really understanding what I could do in the future. And everything that we talk to athletes about is really helping them to use their previous career as a sports person as a springboard into their future, and to really hone in on the skills they developed, and then look at what they need to supplement with to make sure that they're really going in the direction that they want to go in. And that, again, that's something we support massively with. But don't look back on your career with frustration and anger that you're not there, or sadness that you're not still there, because that part of your life's gone. You can't get it back. And ultimately, you're never going to feel the same feelings that you did when you walked out into a stadium full of 80,000 people and millions on TV or whatever it might be, because that is an extreme thing to do, and that's an extreme circumstance. And repeating that outside of an environment like sport is really, really difficult to do. But you will find new passions in your life. You will find new purpose. And if you can hone in on the things that are important to you, and drive towards those things that you find purpose within, then it'll make life a lot easier going forward, and you'll find you're successful a lot quicker.
That's some of the better advice that I've heard about, to just look back positively, because I did the same thing for a while. You think about the things that you screwed up instead of all of the positive things, and that takes certainly takes a shift of your mindset, but it is very doable as well if you can practice it. So that's awesome.
It is difficult for athletes to do that, because the majority of athletes that I know always focus on two things, and not the thing that they should focus on. They focus either on the mistakes they've made, because they want to get better. So they go, all right, okay, I did this or did that, and that could have been an awful lot better. Or they're focusing on the future and where they can get to and what competition they're at next. They never actually, and I didn't do this, never actually focus on the here and now and enjoy the moment and put your head up and go, wow, this is amazing. How the hell have I got here? And that's something that really needs to be drilled into athletes who are still competing. Enjoy what you're doing now, because it doesn't last forever. And the things that you notice when you put your head up, you can take those with you, and you can really springboard yourself into the next part of your life after that.
Definitely. So how do you, not to just ask you another question off that, but how do you do a better job of that now?
How do I do a better job of that now? Or how do athletes do a better job of that now?
You right now, how do you stay present?
I've got a wife who keeps me present. Yeah, she keeps me very grounded. I'm a bit of a dreamer, and I've always got aspirations and things going on in my head that I want to achieve. She keeps me very grounded. She's a former sportswoman herself as well, so she understands where I'm at with what I want to do. But she certainly keeps me present, and it's something that I've learned to do, I suppose, myself certainly over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. I think COVID was a really big wakener for lots of people to really enjoy what they're doing rather than be caught up in the rat race. I think I've started to, I'm in my early 50s now, so I'm kind of, really starting to enjoy some of the things I'm doing rather than either wish I was somewhere else in the past, or keep keeping my eye on the future. You've got to do some of those things, but you've really got to enjoy where you're at the moment as well.
Yeah, and a little sense of humor doesn't hurt as
Yeah,
well. So,
got to have sense of humor. Yeah, yeah.
all right, Steve. Well, listen, thank you again for doing this. This is awesome, and just excited to see where you guys get a million by 28. Maybe if you wouldn't mind just sharing where athletes right now or former athletes could find you, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so if you come to www.act.community, we have a presence in terms of the business at the moment at that web address. The new platform is going to be launched at the end of March, so we're building that. Register your interest if you're an athlete. If you're a business who's listening to this and you want to know more about how you can get great talent into the business through what we do, you can register your interest on the website as well. There's plenty of information on there in terms of what we're doing, how we're doing it in the future. So that's the first port of call. We've got LinkedIn as well. We've got Instagram. We've got Facebook, all that sort of stuff. So Act Community, you'll find us there.
Perfect. Go check it out. And Steve, I'm looking forward to connecting with you when you're in the States, when you're going to some universities. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that very quickly, the collegiate market is a really big thing for us going forward. We're going to be doing a huge amount in the States this coming year, and getting to as many universities and the NCAA athletes that we can do. That's a really big target for us. So yeah, in terms of getting athletes in who are still competing and talking about that transition, because yeah, the collegiate market is it's a great market at the moment in terms of what's happening for athletes with the NIL situation that's ongoing, and I'm really pleased that collegiate athletes who have their profile in place are able to maximize that. Because the facts are that not many athletes who are collegiate athletes, as you know, will go on to become full-time professionals. It's a really small percentage. So we want to be able to support and help those guys who don't go onto those full-time contracts and full-time professional deals as well. So yeah, we'll be over there, and certainly, Joe, we'll catch up and maybe have a beer.
Awesome, Steve. Would love it. Would love it. So, all right. Thanks again, and I'll chat with you soon, Steve.
No worries. Top man. Thanks for the opportunity, Joe. Appreciate it.